Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica Podcast. I am Mustafa Sherif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner AFRY. AFRY is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it. Today we have a new story and we have an amazing storyteller. I have the pleasure to welcome you, Gustav, to Urbanistica Podcast. Hello and welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
How are you doing?
It's so good. Yeah, it's a good day.
How is the weather in Malmö?
The weather is brilliant. It's perfect. It's people in t-shirts and the summer is coming.
Yeah, finally it's coming. Or?
It's a great day to sit inside and have a podcast.
How is your work going so far?
What did you say?
How is it going with the projects and so on? Is it a lot to do now?
Well, I'm totally into my books. There's so much to do with that. I have 100 people at the same time trying to put together into one book and answer emails in all directions.
Yeah,
it's a bit like a podcast, but 100 persons at the same time.
It's gonna be interesting to listen to the story of your book. Before we do that, so tell me about you. How would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
I think there's a million stories I can tell. If I tell the chronological one, it would be that I'm born in Sweden with partly an English Hawaiian family on one side. I'm married into a French family. My mom and dad were journalists. It's influenced me. That meant that I could sit with the dinners and talk about how the urbanists in my city came to be, or what the foreign minister had said, or why certain news didn't make it into the headlines.
Okay.
Or getting a call from the boring press room in the EU, or when Hong Kong became independent or something.
Yeah.
I think that also it kind of influenced you. The work of not all, but many journalists is to try to find unbiased info. It's really interesting in urbanism. How do you listen to others? How do you, if information makes you feel anything, it's usually not information, and then it's usually kind of lobbyism. If it makes you confused or angry or happy or diminished or proud, then you might question yourself: is this information or is this coming from somewhere else? Because most of the time the world is kind of dull and boring, and if you take the dull and boring information, then you might do good urbanism as well. And then mixing this background with my grandparents who were journalists, I think that made me into the urban planner I am. I had my mom's grandparents who worked for Ralph Erskine and had their own practice, introducing me to like Jane Jacobs, all these humanists. And if I should make the story perfect, then I would say that my father's father, he was maybe the opposite, the modernist architecture, talking about the pride of helping to build schools in Kenya and Tanzania. So I think I got the two sides. People are people.
Interesting. And you grew up in Malmö?
Yeah, I mean that's also. I think it's a lot of different things coming together, making me an urban planner. And growing up in Malmö is definitely one of them. It used to be this industrial city when I grew up that got transformed with the help of architecture. It's interesting to see that it was kind of used from the politician as a tool. Usually, politicians are using policies or economics or the movements to create a space, but in Malmö growing up they used architecture and space as a
Ah,
tool.
yeah, yeah.
Not to talk about the politics itself, but only the fact that
Mm,
architecture was used. And I grew up playing in the Western Harbor area, picking up nails and looking at the industries. And
mm.
now I live in this area, and I can physically enter the change. I can physically feel how
Yeah, yeah.
change, happens. I could see how my little brother's friends were going on their skateboards by the sea, and they would jump in the water afterwards. That was not
Yeah, yeah.
allowed.
Okay.
But then you could see how the people behind, instead of putting a ban, they actually
Mm,
allowed it. They made a skate park. Today, people are swimming by the sea. That's also urban planning. It's not the things you see, but it's the things that enable things to
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
To reshape the place in a sense.
That's true. But Gustav, like you told me, your parents journalist.
Mm.
Why you didn't become a journalist as well? Like why you decide to take more like urbanist, like a grandfather?
I think I'm a very philosophical person, a very creative person. But I also like when that creativity is not necessarily only my own expression, but it's related to the world. Urbanism has that part that it's creativity, but if you only express yourself, that's not very democratic. To impose your views on other people. You also need to relate to a certain reality and
Mm,
listen to
mm.
people. So I was looking for a creative work. I was talking to my grandfather, my mother's father, who was like, don't be an architect. It's not as romantic as you think. You should go to this education in Karlskrona and become a spatial planner.
Ah,
It's much better.
I think but I thought like in my opinion like architecture is much more creative and colorful and than urban planning. Or what do you think?
I think
Like
I
in
think people optimally people should be shaped into themselves in a sense. So that
of
I mean
course.
I've been very lucky that I feel that I'm very much myself in the work I do. I
Of
could
course,
have
I'm
been.
talking about like of course like decide what you think is cool and you can be yourself. But I think like in my opinion, urban planning less creative when it comes to like I see like architecture more like giving a shape, a form, color, material. Of course, like there is it depends how you define creativity. Like, but from my
Mm.
opinion, I think like or my point of view, I think architecture is more like one step extra creative.
Yeah, it depends. I think that I once talked to a professor in creativity.
Yeah.
That was
Wow.
super. That
Wow.
was super interesting. He was
Yeah.
talking about the fact that you should not have a hierarchy in creativity. You should not have the
Interesting.
head of creativity. You should allow everyone to be creative, because creativity is the art of finding solutions to things. And
Interesting.
you can find solutions to anything. And
That's true.
uh, I think the creativity I find myself in urban planning is this creativity of finding, well, what is um, what is the future of life? How can
Mm,
people's lives unfold in a place? You
mm.
need to be really creative to kind of
Eh,
imagine how a
mm.
space where people's lives can happen looks like.
True.
That's a really hard puzzle.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me what part of urban planning you work with is like more doing master plans, visions, or like more policy making.
Well, I've been mostly working with quite large scale urban planning. I think the cliche of what I've been working with so far has been this very large scale waterfront development, 50 hectares or so, next to a city center,
Yeah.
expanding the city
Mm,
center of Malmö, Gothenburg, or Varberg, or some
mm.
big Scandinavian city. Um, or also giving advice in very early phases, a bit conceptually or philosophically, or
Yeah, yeah.
uh, if we're going to build this house, what could work then. There's already so much commerce in the ground floor. Maybe we should have associations instead, or that's also maybe there should be more variation in the economical scales of what you can build here, so that when one economical scale collapses, there's another one who takes. That's I've been working with a lot of different things.
Yes, and the last project, as I know, is the last big project you work with is your book.
Yeah.
So tell me, because the way we met, we didn't met physically, like ERL, mostly like on LinkedIn. Like you're commenting here, I'm replying here, you're putting something there, I'm replying, and so on. So I think we had like a long relationship on LinkedIn, right? Like back and forth, back and forth. So, and recently I saw you're doing creating a book.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, what is behind it, the background of you deciding creating this book?
I think in 2017 I made this like 5-minute short videos online. That was called AGA Talks, where I was talking about the resilient city and the inclusive city, and it was before COVID, so I had to travel and actually meet people all over Europe, and I talked to really interesting people about their point of view of these themes. I try to ask as few questions as possible because it's interesting what people say, not what I bring in a sense. And this, I guess, is doing that again in a sense. Only that this time I put 100 people in a book, and somebody called it that I'm doing a Pechakucha in book form, or like the architectural festival in a book form. I think that's a good explanation, because I talk to someone, I make it into one
page,
A4 page, which is really, really short. And that creates, 100 pages, kind of, more or less.
But what do you what do you want to explore by this book?
Well, I think it's really interesting when you bring a lot of different people together, and the thing that happens in between is actually what's being said, not what people say themselves, maybe. And you ask the same question to many. My father used to say at some point, you should only ask one question and ask it over and over again, because there's a million answers to it, and you don't need more than one question.
Okay.
And so I bring 100 people together, and I like that diversity in itself. That creates something really interesting. Just bringing people together, but still to kind of create a red thread, I have made it into 6 chapters, where I make it a bit chronological. I start by asking around 15 people, what is the challenges we have today in our cities, and maybe the historical too. If we know our challenges, then what attitude can we have to find solution, chapter 2, because I don't find the solutions interesting. It's more interesting what attitude that can lead to the solution.
So you mean like the process of creating the solution, not the solution by itself?
I think people do too much of best practices. It's more interesting to understand the context and take on the context in different ways, and then you can find more adaptable solutions, which is a bit thing you do if you adapt the best practices as well. But it's interesting to understand the philosophy behind why we do things.
Okay. So this is chapter 2, the attitude.
Then chapter 3, if we know our challenges and start to understand solutions, how do we deal with things that are really urgent? It's both a matter of doing things quickly, but it's also a matter of doing things more deliberatively. You need to think it through a bit. If we understand our urgency, then we can start creating visions. So that's the next chapter. If we have a vision, we need to take action. So
of course,
that's a skill in itself, and often quite different people than the one who makes the vision. And the last chapter, how can we imagine the future? So that creates a really nice,
interesting, nice,
thread.
good flow.
Yeah, and then people take it in different direction. And,
So you explore how Like you explore what is the future that we are heading to and how can we create that future, also solving problems or challenges we have now, right?
Yeah, a bit like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Mm.
also answer these questions in the book?
Well, I try to make people answer them, but I mean, me writing them, of course, somehow I'm going to influence just by the people
But
I
just by,
choose, for
yeah.
instance. Or
Who
uh,
are you talking to?
well, there are so many now. At the moment, I talk to a lot of city planners of
Hmm.
with Rotterdam and Vienna and Copenhagen and Rio, and talked to the former principal planner of the World Bank, professors of
Hmm.
UNESCO and Sorbonne, and the director of the Pritzker Prize, the Pritzker Prize
That's
winners.
cool.
And I also try to mix it up, you know,
Mm.
to have like I have a 4-year-old kid and I have like future planners. That makes a good mix.
Yeah, yeah,
To have the future of the planners. I
yeah.
talked to the advisors, to the mayors of Paris and London and Copenhagen. Um, yeah, and so there's really a lot of people with
That's
different
super cool.
directions.
Is it easy to get them on board and say like so they contribute, or no? They say no, you should pay me, or something like this. How
I
is the
think
collaboration going?
by now I've asked all the hundreds if they want to join. I have finished about 50,
Wow.
50 that's about to be I'm about to talk to them or they haven't
Okay.
answered yet. And I have 50 who didn't reply. I think I had 1 or 2 who said no. You know, if they don't
Ah,
want
okay.
to, if they don't want to talk,
Y-
most oftenly they don't reply.
Ah,
But
yeah. It's but you
you
require
know,
like one A4, right? The answer you want to
mm,
in total, like
yeah.
these five questions. Thanks.
But it's a bit different depending on people. It's also people. Many of these people are very very busy. They don't really have time.
Yeah.
So they prefer different ways of talking in order to have time.
Hmm.
Some people want the pen. You know, you
Ah.
have 400 words, write something
Yeah,
while you're on
yeah.
an airplane somewhere. Some people want 3, 4, 5, 6 questions that they can answer,
Yes, yes.
and many people want to talk for half an hour or so,
Ah.
or 45 minutes, and then I have a talk and I have to put it
Mm,
down myself for
exactly.
what the conversation was about.
Mm. So
Um,
the 50 answers from 50 people you have now,
mm,
how do they look like? The same? Like how the way of they answer the future we are heading to, like do you see
mm.
like almost we are thinking the same or no?
Well, at the moment, I call the book "Reinventing a Present City." I
Mm.
put the word "present" there because that's a theme I've seen. It's really interesting to see. That's a very broad word, presence. You know, the people they talk about things like, you know, we need to be present in our decision making. We
Mm.
can't just take decision. We need to be, you know, have an idea what we do. We need to be present with our time in the city. We only live 24 hours a day. You know, you need to prioritize our time.
Mm.
You know, Carlos Morenos talks about the 15-minute city. We need to measure the city in the time we live. We can't just have everything. We need to
Mm.
understand how to use it. We need to be present in terms of emotional intelligence. You know, whatever choices we take, it will always be filtered through somebody. You know, somebody will go through a cancer treatment once a month, and when somebody asks for a building permit, it might come just after that treatment, and the person will be very angry. Right? It might be a thunderstorm that day, and this cycles to people's emotions, and
Mm.
we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the fact that emotions are influencing what is built much more than theory and logics. You know,
Mm.
if the builders are unhappy and think the architect is an idiot, they're not going to make a beautiful building because the architect hasn't been emotionally intelligent in a sense. Um, so this I call it a bit of an ugly duckling because I don't exactly know what it's about.
Yeah.
But the ugly duckling of presence, I think is really interesting. It's also the fact that we need to build human-centered and planet-centered places. We only have one world, and we cannot pretend that it's like a lot of different ones. We only have our own human presence, so we need to understand what our needs are.
So do you see them? Do you see that people have the same picture of the future, or no, different pictures?
Yeah, people have very different points of view there. Of course, they work within their own fields in different directions. So. But we can get glimpses from different people. I talked with Von Tan, that works at UCL in London, and he talked about that we need to understand our not knowing better.
Okay.
Because not knowing can be a lot of different things. Sometimes we talk about risk management, but if we talk about risk management, we might already kind of define what the possibilities and probabilities are. So we already, in a sense, define the future. But there's also other kinds of not knowing. We might not know what actions are available. We might not know what the potential outcomes might be, or the relationship in between our actions and outcomes. We might not know the value of the outcome.
Yeah.
Did we do good? Should we do it again? I worked with Nya Årstafältet in Stockholm, 2008, this big project quite centrally in Stockholm. It still hasn't been built. I have no idea if the outcome of what I did as an urban planner was good, because it takes so much time to build it.
So sad.
Yeah, on one hand, I also like this effect that it's a lot of people who collaborate, and everyone is just one part of the brick, and something is unfolding slowly. And but yeah, it's also sad in a sense that we don't know if we did good. It takes too much time to know.
Of course, yeah. Even if let's say you plan something, and then after, I don't know, 20 years or 25, you see that you didn't do good, it's gonna take so much time to fix it as well, right? From urban planning perspective.
And time has changed, so it's not the same questions anymore. So the new conditions is something else, and so you already need to do something else, and
We're gonna talk about this also. Is it a lot of machine, AI, digitalization involved in the answers that you get?
Not super much. I think it's a lot of answers a bit the other way around, that we need to also, we need to be present as people as well. We need to understand our, I think personally, I think we have evolved so much technically the last 2000 years. We have not evolved very much perceptively. Our ideas to look at the world, they are still the same as roughly 2000 years ago. We still have the same view on what the world is about and who we are as people. And we've always been innovating all the time. That things are innovative is not something new. That's something that we've always been doing for a very long time. And I think we are coming to a momentum in time where we need to question our perception of the world. We need to understand that we only have one world, and this might be a climate change, for instance. That's something in our heads. It doesn't have anything to do with technology itself. Who was it? It was Tanja Lindqvist, who works at the Danish Architecture Center. She was talking about that a lot of our challenges today, they come from the fact that our inner crisis, we have our inner crisis that is connecting to our outer crisis, and we need to fix that. We both need to fix ourselves in order to fix the world around us and create a kind of regenerative world in a sense. And that's interesting. How do we understand our surrounding in a way so we can take care care of it?
Yeah.
How can we be caretakers of our surrounding?
So if you, like from the answers you get, if you describe everything with, let's say, 5 focus areas, like, let's say, maybe climate, maybe human-centric, what are like the, let's say, 5 words describing people's answers? Or
I think people are when they talk about human-centered places, they start to talk about that human-centered and the planet. It needs to be human planet-centered.
So both social and ecological.
Yeah, it's when you talk to landscape architects, they talk about the fact that we need to create the ecology of the city. The city doesn't have its own biodiversity and ecology in a sense. So if we should reinvent this, what is it? If we should understand the heritage of the green of the city, the boulevards of Paris, for instance, what is that? How do we care for the green history of our city, and how do we care for the green of the city also needs to perform more functions than it ever did. It's really hard to understand.
Yeah.
So it's people planet center. The global problems of climate is of course there all along. I think in sense of that is a lot of talking about the fact that, for instance, Piero Palisaro, who is head of all Italy's public buildings, he's talking about that we have an economy that understand that we need to be green. So the economy and the logic itself is already green, but we don't have we don't have an emotional understanding of it. So we still take bad decisions because we don't understand what the consequences might be. He took the example, I think it was in Australia, where they had to make a kind of feast, or I think it was 30 days or something, where they couldn't have water because of a drought.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
I think I brought some LinkedIn and we talked about it. And then he said that after that experience where people had to cut their water for 1 month, they got an emotional understanding of the fact that they needed to not use that much water. There was an understanding, not only the logics of it. And that made people save water, and that was good, and then he was talking about the fact that it's the same with a lot of the climate change issues. We don't have the emotional understanding for it.
So we don't react or care so much.
Yeah, maybe we care, but we don't feel it.
Yeah, could be also. Oh, if I connect this topic to urban planning, let's say if you're not attached to a place on an area, will you do the same, or will you plan the same? If you don't have feelings to an area, let's say I assign you like project, let's say in Baghdad,
Yeah.
And then I assign you a project in Malmö.
Yeah.
How much difference do you think you will do in planning? Because I guess for one you have emotions, so other ones no.
I remember I was working with Nyhamnen in Malmö, where I was living in Brussels. I was living abroad, and I was working with my other home.
Yeah.
I love this word multi-locality, that people they don't belong to a country, but many different cities. So
okay.
Every city you look down on your shoes, that's your multi-locality. But then I was super happy to work with my home. I'm sure I put extra hours into that project because I felt a kind of belonging working with that. I think on the other hand, when you work in a place that you don't know, you can see, isn't it? I think there's a quote, something about that. If you're not from there, you see the problems, but if you are there, you can
get
fix,
blind.
you can fix them.
Okay.
If you're not from the place, you cannot. you don't know how to fix things. You don't have the right connections and the understanding of the place, but you don't see what's wrong. That's why it's wrong, because you don't see it. But if you come from another place, you immediately see what's wrong. And
yeah. Because also
me having lived in 7 countries, coming back to Sweden, I can see all the things that people just take for granted. people don't see the amazing life quality that we have in Sweden. On the contrary, they wish that they were as culturally as Paris, even though it would be better to be yourself.
So you, let's say, what is best from your opinion is that to assign planning to planners that who are not living in the same city, or should we assign to planners who are living in the same city or region?
I think you need all of them. Working in Holland, I love this way of, they had this kind of iterative way of working that I think I took with me. I like when you work in a team and you have the plan, it's finished from the beginning in a sense, and then you give it to another person. Maybe it's only one person. It's not a big meeting with everyone at the same time that just listens and don't do anything with the budget, but it's one-on-one. That traffic planner might say, well, you need to change this. And then you give it to the landscape architect and they change something. And then you give it to the cultural planner who changed something. And then you give it to the local person who changed something. And you give it to the international person who sees something else. And once you iterate something like this, you don't need the public participation that's in a document by the side because it's already in. You just make sure that the people that are affected are actually working with the end result, and that it just gets checked over and over again in this iterative circle until it's really been worked through and everybody has consensus about it.
But is this like their way of working?
Well, I think this is my way of working. It's I think I got the first stones from it from working in Holland.
Okay.
Coming the first day, this is the final plan. And it's like, well, we need to make the analysis for, and then like, no, but that's gonna come by working with it.
Okay.
Working for AFRY Architects, where I was for 8 years. We were based in a lot of different places. We were based in Paris and Malmö and Gothenburg and Stockholm and the West Indies and Nantes. And so, and then, well, we were 40 people, but we were still a small office compared to the bigness of the project that we had. So we always needed to collaborate with people. And I think the learnings from that is that you are only as big as the people you say hello to, You are not the biggest architecture office by having the most employees. You are the biggest architecture office by reaching out to people, and you can reach out to anyone in the world.
Like your network of people, you mean?
If you have a project and this project have a certain kind of landscape architecture, there might be a brilliant landscape architecture in that specific field in Thailand. So let's connect to that person.
And you think so? Okay.
And it might be a perfect local resident in your competitor architecture firm. So let's do it together.
Okay. I got your point. Yeah. So Gustav, back to the question of the 5 words. What will these words be? I heard the first one like people and planet.
And I already said presence. And what else? There's many talk about the narrative. The narrative is creating the future that we want. Fredrik Gerten talks about the fact that we need to own our own narrative. Carlos Morenos talked about that as a scientist, you might not have as big PR communication team as a big firm. So how do you make sure that you get your narrative out so that science has a big narrative?
Yeah.
Ethan Kent, he talks about the narrative in the sense that the narrative creates the future. It's something that people can connect to.
Yeah.
Rob Adams, the city architect of Melbourne, he's been working as city architect for 40 years.
Wow.
So he has this really long point of view where he was talking about the fact that if you're just consistent with your narrative, you have something you can build onto, and that creates the city itself. It's a tool to use, and it should be consistent and it should be meaningful. And
So narrative also, and the last one.
What else are many people talking about? Well, maybe different forms of how you govern the city, or or how we imagine the future. That we are sometimes we are creating the history again instead of creating the future. We might have a picture about that the future looks like Manhattan with big skyscrapers, but then Manhattan was built in 1890 and it was built for horses. So we are recreating a picture of the history that we think are modern, even though it's actually not modern at all. And the kind of governance that is connected to the pictures we think is the future. It's also something we don't think about. We might think about something that's really big and large scale, and the future might be more about democracy than about something spectacular. That might be something from the past. A good example is when I lived in Brussels, and you have the Palace Justice, which was the biggest 19th century building. I think it still is in the world. It's an enormous building built by, the bloody Congo money that Belgium got from having Congo. And the building is so built that they don't afford to put up the scaffolding to renovate it. And it takes too much time to put it up. It's not built for people. And that's a kind of that's also a disconnect, to not realize that and to not have that emotional intelligence that I talked about, to understand the needs we need. When I lived in Brussels, I loved that I knew the name of my neighbor, Dorothea, and that she was making pie in the store downstairs, and we said hello to the people next door. But the big Palace Justice is just empty. There's no one saying hello there. But it might look very well on the plans.
Right.
If it would be a rendering,
But there are some few questions I'd love to hear your opinion about. And the first one is how can we plan for the unknown instead of recreating the past?
Well, I think, I already talked a bit about Van Tan, who talked about the different understanding of the unknown. For instance, he also talks about that we should create the planning for growth instead of deciding what will grow. It's a kind of, there's a lot of people talking about that we should enable instead of deliver things. The goal is to enable things. We should not deliver plans. We should enable people to do things, and that everybody can unfold what they want in their city. So we should care for. Anton takes the example of the tree that we should care for it so it grows, but we cannot decide how the fruit looks. We don't have the power to do that. It's going to grow anyway. So the question for us as planners is to make the best environment for something to grow as possible, because we don't have the power for everything. We cannot decide everything, even though we draw it in the plan. It's not going to look like that, because that builder is going to be unhappy or something.
But I mean, maybe that's why there are planners, so they plan or they decide what is going to grow.
Yeah, but I think
instead of letting everyone grow what they want to.
Yeah, I always had that my favorite quote. I think the original quote is about festivals. I always changed it for life, and it says the most beautiful places is not those where we planned life in advance, but there was a place for it to unfold. I think that's That's my definition of what planning is about. You make it, and then it should not be so flexible that it's empty, that it's just empty space.
Yeah.
And it should not be that defined as so it becomes the Churchill quote: first we build our buildings, and then that shapes people around. It should be the other way around: first we live our life, and then life shapes our building.
But we don't do this anymore. Let's talk about Sweden now. Maybe like it's too broad if I say we. In Sweden, we I think we are going far, far, far away and controlling and programming everything. No.
Yeah, I think that's people. There's a tendency that people want to express themselves instead of giving space. And when we express ourselves too much, we are maybe that's what I talked about before too. I want to be creative, but I like this fact that it's not my expression. If I wanted to express only me, it's better to do music or something else. But if I want to express people's life, it's not only my expression, it's someone else's expression coming into, and that's a balance, I guess. How to handle that.
But also, the thing is that cities or developers are afraid. The thing is that if you leave, let's say, the area or the place and letting everyone do what they want, then it might lead to something, what do you call English? Chaotic.
Yeah.
Because somebody's doing this, somebody's doing this, somebody's doing this, and so on. So you don't have something in common. If you get my idea, that's why maybe.
I think it's interesting with I often take the example of different, because I'm from Sweden, a consensus country, and I lived 6 years in Brussels in Belgium. That's also a consensus country. But there's two different kinds of consensus, which is really interesting. So the Belgian, or starting with the Scandinavian one, the consensus is a way to kind of avoid conflict and take the average that doesn't create conflict, and everybody might not agree upon, but nobody is having conflict about this solution that's in between. The Belgian consensus is more about the side-by-side consensus. So you have the Flemish people and the French-speaking side, and both of them should have their, it should be both the French school and the Flemish school and the international school side by side with 3 different systems, and they should be, everything should be side by side. And on one hand, that creates a beautiful authenticity. That's life, side by side. The diversity united. That's the EU slogan. I love that. But it also creates a very hard governance. There's always, escalators. It doesn't work in Brussels because something happened. There's always something that doesn't work because this way of consensus is very hard to move forward. While the Swedish consensus makes it extremely easy to govern. You can almost dictate things, do this middle way all the way.
Yeah.
While it might be a bit of it's not so authentic as the side-by-side way of having consensus. And that's also a balance. Where do you put what trade-offs do you do so that it becomes both an authentic life and represent everyone, but it also is manageable enough so that it doesn't fall down and break apart, so nothing works and it's for no one.
And Gustav, you work a lot in projects out of Sweden, in different countries. And do you see, in Sweden, we are getting more, we regulate more the plans and everything, and in other countries, they're a bit more flexible in the way they plan their plans?
I find it so interesting that sometimes it's more difference in between different cities than in between different countries.
Okay.
It can be very big difference in between Malmö and Stockholm and Gothenburg and in Copenhagen or whatever in Scandinavia, while as big difference as in between Paris and Malmö, it can be in between Varberg and Åre or whatever. And then to some point, I think the basis of many things are a bit similar.
Okay.
Of course, there's a lot of differences as well, but you take the zoning of France and Sweden. You have the detailplan in Sweden, and you have the PLU in France, and there are many things that are similar.
Okay.
Both of the systems are dealing with discussions about the modernistic zoning. That's the basis of both of them, even though they are different, very different in a lot of different ways. The foundation of them have similar discussions, and the differences. In a French strategic planning, you can write that in this area it's Mustafa Sherif who is the main planner. He needs to be in this plan for 25 years.
Wow.
Which we don't see in Sweden. And the Swedish system is also very divided, and the architectural profession doesn't have a lot of power. On one side, the architectural profession has high salaries. In a sense, we have a strong union in Sweden, so we are kind of protected in our working environment. But in our profession itself, it's all these phases, and then they exchange you for someone else, and you are not the one who follows. It's a competition, and they exchange you for someone else, and the one that follows the entire timeline, that's the person who makes the decisions. So that might be the builder who decides that if you don't do like us, we're gonna throw you out, or or it might be the city planning department who makes a competition, but then they do something else, or so there's a difference in this way of making small projects all the time in Sweden, in a sense.
Yeah. Do you plan like when you plan? Do you plan for 15-minute city? Do you have it in mind when you plan, like actively? Okay, I do this. So it leads to a 15-minute city or area.
Well, of course, that's the. Well, I don't think I can say I don't do that, but I don't know if I really think about it like that. I know even before the 15-minute city came out as a concept, it was this. I loved how the French sometimes were calculating the distance to the boulangerie, the distance to the baker. Of course, and the Germans been working with the polycentric city for a long time. That the 15-minute city has a stronghold in Paris. It's not so weird. It's extremely centralized Paris. You even have the entire country. All the roads are just going to the ring road, and then you have this extremely traffic chaos around the ring road, and everybody has to take the. Working in Paris Paris is the best place in the world to visit. I love Paris. Working in Paris is horrible.
That's because of the transportation, right?
And the centrality, and you have your friends. They are 1 hour away from you. After work, you need to travel 1 hour to visit your friend, and you live densely together. So you might have your birthday in a restaurant, which makes a great thing for the city life, but it's also very harsh life to live. It's a lot of commuting. Everything is far away. People live far away from each other. It's an enormous city, very harsh in the way of living in the day-to-day.
This is
and it's a beautiful city. I should not say it's a bad city.
It's so lovely.
But it's very hard in certain ways. Our friends are moving away from Paris because it's a horrible city for kids.
Yeah, like I think with the
and when I say Paris, I don't say inner city Paris. I see the urbanization, the 12 million people who live in Ile-de-France, in all of Paris.
Wow. It's like it's sad with the big cities growing and growing. Like the distance gets like larger and larger. You need more time in order to do something. Like as you mentioned, if you want to go to the office or meet friends or just go to somewhere, like it's a huge amount of time. And then with the urbanization, if it's not done in the right way, then like kids, they don't have a space, or people, or us people, we don't have a space to meet in the public, and it's on the coast of the nature and everything.
Stockholm, where you live, is also a lot of distances. I'm always so
It's
amazed
getting
when
bigger. Yeah, it's larger and larger now.
I remember I took like Stockholm Urbanization, and then I took Paris, and I scaled it down to the same. And then you have the city center of Stockholm, and you have Paris city center. The city center of Stockholm is really small.
Yeah.
So if you take away the city center of Stockholm, you just have a urbanization of suburbs.
Exactly.
And you listen to a lot of the participation in Stockholm, and it's me who live in Malmö and who lived in a lot of European cities. It's so amazing that people often want to be closer to nature than work, and that in almost any city, people would say, I need to be close to work, priority one. Then this, being able to fish or being able to do things in the weekends, and that's a bit more high in the prioritization in Stockholm. And I think both the archipelago landscape, which makes it hard, and the fact that people want to be close to nature has made Stockholm very spread out. In a sense.
That's true.
And as long as people don't want to live close to one another, they live far away from each other.
That's true.
And that could also be good. Then you need to make a good city in terms of that, and a 15-minute city in terms of living close to nature and having a very unique way of living, which is beautiful as well.
And you mentioned in the beginning when we talked, you mentioned like, okay, we create some plans now, solutions now, and when they are implemented, then there are other challenges at that time. So how do we create solution that like don't take so long time, and by the time they implemented the challenge, like, if you understand me correctly, like, we do something
hard.
now, in 10 years they are completely other challenges, so like our plan is useless somehow.
I talked to Helena Ueson, and she was talking a lot about that we are we're taking so long time to find the solutions that by the time we actually implement it, it's not there anymore. But
that's true.
But it's hard. I mean, one of them is the flexibility I talked about before. My old boss here, Jiu-Jitsu, he talked a lot about that. We need to have that kind of flexibility to grow within time, and that's a question of making something very simplex. He talked about it's the simplicity of making something complex. That can be adapted in time and reused and repurposed, and that's very much in time, the circular economy and how we repurpose things and make it flexible so that it can evolve within time. That's how we always did, but we kind of got it in the recent years, I guess. Then there are other ideas. I talked to Michael Colville Anderson in Copenhagen. He talked about the fact that smaller is quicker. That's a simple concept as well. If you tree dies on the street, that was his example. If the tree dies on the street, if you call the municipality, it's only one person you can talk to.
Yeah.
And you fix it, and they plant a new tree. That's quick compared to having the COP19 with lots of people in the world level. And so if you have a lot of this very small decision making on a very face-to-face basis, then you can create bigger change and quicker change. Which is interesting. Or the Ethan Kent I talked about before, the narrative can move things. You have the narrative that holds the vision together, and because you're very clear in your narrative is a sort of ideology. It's not political, but it's a vision that people have together that enables them to iterate the future in a sense. They take one step at a time. And I think the scale is also about the economical scales. I always think that living in Malmö, it's so interesting with the scale of the economy of who builds houses in Malmö compared to Copenhagen, because here you have builders, which they are not bad themselves, but when you only have builders with one economical model, it's like you only have one leg to stand on. But in Copenhagen, you have a second leg, which is the pension fund and the philanthropic funds. They're much slower. So when you have an economical recession, you don't you only kill the leg that's the builder that can't get the loans, but the pension funds keep building. Then you have the other leg, which is this small, the organizations and the businesses and the private people. And I love the scale in Brussels. You have these townhouses, which I remember even me and my wife lived at a house in central Brussels. We could afford to buy a house in 3 floors and rent out 2 floors to somebody.
Wow.
This house would totally needed a lot of renovation, so maybe we didn't afford one that was actually affordable for us. But the fact that we even considered being property owners, that shows that it was one more scale of economy in the city, and all these different scales complementing one another.
Yeah.
It's not that you should take away any, you should have all of them. But I think if you have a lot of different legs to stand on, that's always good, And
it's like how they say, don't put all your eggs in one basket or something like this when you invest.
Yeah. And you talk about this in urban planning in terms of functionality, but you seldom talk about it in terms of economical scales.
We don't talk economy so much. I mean,
no.
when we plan,
which is very interesting, because I think the term of architecture is very interesting, because if we apply the term architecture in other fields, we would not think about it the same way. IT architecture, for instance. Would we take the same decision about architecture as we do with IT architecture, or the budget, the architecture of our economy? To make a budget itself is an architecture.
Yeah, also, yeah.
And the kind of decisions we take for our economy, building an architecture of economy, is really different from the decisions we take when we talk about the built environment. And I think architecture can be inspired by how other architectures are built up, in a sense. It would be interesting to see an architecture book with not a single building or a single, only IT architecture, and the first Pritzker Prize of the Corona period goes to Zoom and Teams. That's also an architecture.
Yeah. You tell me you love philosophy and urban planning. Do you have
that, I guess.
do you have like a super philosophical idea or theory? Like every one of us has something. Carlos Moreno, he did the 15-minute city. There are people did the new urbanism. Like every planner has some kind of theory. I love to hear from you. Do you have some like crazy idea or just a theory that you think I'm thinking about this, or tell me.
I think I've been talking about a few of them, like this kind of giving space for life to unfold. The diversity united is kind of, the most beautiful places are not where life was planned in advance, but there was a space for life to unfold as a theory in itself. I don't know.
Can you elaborate more on this one? Like how can life create the plan or the place? Because this is what you said, right? Like life.
Yeah, I don't know how to put it forward. I think I've been talking a bit about it, but it's not about dictating anything. It's about setting a path and balancing I think another thing I think is super important is how we talk, the words we use. I think we should always use the word we. We should never say them. I mean, even if it's them who did something, we should talk about we, because it changed our questions and our answers and our way of dealing with things. Talking about we is a way to move things forward, and we need to take these steps. We cannot blame it on someone else. Even if they did it, we cannot blame it on them, because we need to take steps, and we need to take part. We don't know how to do it, but we need to do what we can where we are with what we have. We need to do things.
Exactly.
And we need to talk about the city, and we need to both respect the group and the individual and make space for that.
And you mentioned we. I have a question about we. So we as urban planners, what should we stop do when we plan cities?
Well, one thing I talked about already is the best practice solutions. That we should learn to do more diversity side by side. There's not only one solution to things. We need to explore the philosophy behind and the attitude behind, and if the closed courtyard is the best solution, then we should do a lot of closed courtyards. But when we are building the town hall, it maybe doesn't need to have the closed courtyard. Maybe that one needs to have something else. So we need to have the different solutions side by side, not only the best practice solution. We should have the best practice solution, but maybe only in 90%, not in 100%, because then they become the problem themselves. We need to have many images of how the future looks like, how many solutions to how a place can be. That's all the legs again. You need to have.
So you mean like we plan with more diverse kind of plans and theories instead of doing copy paste and doing kind of the same theory, the same plan, the same concept everywhere. Is this what you try to say, right?
Yeah, I guess. And we need to be contextual and do it for every context. It needs to be adapted to the place. Sometimes we are very good at following, things that people already follow, like trends are. I think it's more than just following and more than just inventing. I think it's really important to be the second person who follows. That takes much more courage to be the second person who follows somebody who could be an idiot. You have no idea. You are the first one in the world to follow someone else, and you don't know what this person is thinking about. That takes a lot of courage. And you are not inventing anything. The world is filled of people who invent things over and over again. But you dare to make the first connection to the we, and dare to start following and see if this ugly duckling can grow and hopefully help it to push it a bit.
What skills should we learn as urban planners and why?
We should learn to put. I talked about a few too. Putting the inputs in the actual documents. Not making things by the side. If you have the public participation should go into the document that creates the change, not a report by the side that then when somebody's making the change, there's no budget for reading the report. Things should be integrated and come together and connect to the way things work.
So what is the name of this skills? Like engage people, or no? How do you put it as a skill?
Yeah, that's hard to know. It's a kind of collaboration, I guess. It's also an understanding about that it's time that builds cities, which is an endless resource, and we need to prioritize that time and take decisions with time. Time builds our houses, and time builds that populates our streets, and we choose things and prioritize things. The street is not populated because we sit at work. So if we sit at work saying that we need to have active ground floors, but we are not there, then we are part of it.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you let's say if you get $1 million as a budget to invest in something related to city development, on what will you put this budget?
I will put it in something that has this economical scales we talked about, the diversity of economical scales. I guess one idea I had that would be interesting is it would be interesting to find a project where you can turn the hierarchy of age upside down. I think if we are to build the future for our future generations, the expert on that is the people who will live in the future, the young people. And what would happen if the young people would be the leaders and the old people, help them and to fulfill their own direction with all that experience they have. Because today is a bit the other way around. It's the old people who say how the young people will live in the future, and then give them things to do.
But
that would be.
Maybe I will be the what do you call it, devil advocate. But like they say, the young people, they don't know so much about the future. They don't have so much experience. So how can they create a future? I'm playing a devil. This is not my opinion.
Yeah, but I think that in that scenario, it's the older generation's mission would be to make sure that the young people can lead. I think I say that too because I had experience of similarities. I had experience of taking quite big responsibilities, being quite young, and that doesn't come with that I know everything as being young. That comes with the fact that people who are older than me takes the responsibility and helps me. I come with a lot of being young, you have a less of a salary, for instance, so you can work 3 times as much. So the older person can give you a lot of things to do. You can do mistakes 3 times before it's okay, and then they can help you along the way. And if it doesn't work, they can actually do things for you. And by being young, I can ask questions that hasn't been questioned before. And so maybe now it's my turn to ask the younger people what they want to do.
Yeah. And before we move to the next section of this episode, I'd love to ask about your book. Like, I'm very interested in this writing books and so on. What is like the most interesting moment in this process, like of creating the book? What do you enjoy the most?
I love meeting all the people and listen to what they think, and that's what you are doing now, meeting me, and I expose you to new ideas, and hopefully that creates a totally other idea in your head.
True.
And I love that. That's
And what is the moment that you don't enjoy the process, or some moments in the process that you don't enjoy them?
Well, I do it with my own time, so it's an economical constraint to use hundreds and hundreds of hours to meet people.
Takes a lot of time, right? Like your idea, your book idea.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of it's I need to find the people and then put them in my different chapters and contact them and show them that I'm not dangerous and and convince them that this is a good idea, and then talk to them and then edit things and send it back, and this is not good, let's change that, and now it's okay, now I recognize myself. And
how are you going to publish it? Is it like through Amazon, or you have like a publisher here in Sweden?
Well, at the moment I have some discussions with publishers, but that's still I'm still looking for a publisher. I will see what happens. And I also got the feeling that the publisher might want to see something more finished.
Like more some product or something.
Yeah. Or in worst case, I will be the publisher. So
cool.
There will be a book.
There will be a book. But tell us, how is the format? There will be like some illustrations, how many pages, language, and so on. And maybe when can we start read it?
Well, it's 100 people with 1 page each. At the moment, I don't know if that's how it's going to look. It's on one double page each with a picture and a text. That makes about 200 pages, roughly. I also do it the way I do because I like that process. One interview at a time. I write it. It's finished.
Okay. One by one.
a lot of people writing books, they talk about the horrible experience of getting the holistic part together. It took so much work, and I need to edit it and move the chapters around. And the fact that that everything can be put apart to single interviews, that helps me a bit in the process as well. It makes an easy process. So at the moment, I finished about half of it since Christmas.
Wow. Good job. 5 months.
Yeah, that's pretty quick so far. I don't know. I don't have a plan that I'm going to be finished in 6 months, or I just do it in my time, and I know that I'm motivated. So it's going to be a book eventually.
Yeah, cool. But it's going to be in English, I guess, right?
Yeah, and it's in English.
Yeah, cool. I'm really looking forward to reading your book with a signed copy, from you.
Yeah, and you are in it too, so
it's gonna be cool. So tell me, now we are in the second chapter. Is it gonna be more kind of personal questions for you? So you are very active, and I follow you on LinkedIn. You work, you do a book, you engage in so many different things. What motivates you to do what you do? Especially, let's talk about urban planning,
well, I'm very curious, and I like these kind of questions and to philosoph about things, and I think it's also important how to make good spaces where everybody feel like they belong, and I think it's important to, when creating your own energy, to create it so that you enjoy it. You should not do it for someone else's case. You should not try to be a star because it's really lonely out there in space. You should do it because you like it, and then hopefully you are inviting some other fireflies into the dark space.
So your curiosity is the power that motivates you to move and to do stuff.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. If you ask me tomorrow, I will say something else.
And what do you want people to say about you, 100 years from now, when they will read your name or hear your name?
Well, I think I want them to maybe read about their neighbors instead, and I want to create things not necessarily for me. I want them to read about the future generation, and that to make a better world. I think a lot of planners, no matter who you talk to, they always has different variation of that be motivating them, that they will actually want to do something not only for themselves, but I don't care what people think about me. I can be an idiot.
So if I let's say 20, what is the 2123?
Yeah.
So if we will see Gustav, what
I will be all forgotten. And hopefully people will be happy, and
we will have your book, no?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe the space around will feel good.
Yeah.
I'm somehow part of that world.
Hopefully all the projects that you planned are done and people are there and start living,
Yeah, maybe my daughter's daughter, they are happy and they feel at ease. And it's easy to live in this world in the future. And
hopefully.
I think it's a question in the future too that people need to be. I would hope for people in the future to be happy about their own existence. People. I remember I had this discussion about the fact that in school we learned how to find problems and then how to solve them. That's almost everything is based upon that. We are extremely skilled at searching for problems and then fixing them, meaning that when we have fixed our problems, we only have skills in finding new problems to fix. So by definition, we don't create the future we want. We create the future that we are going to define as bad just by our skill. That connects to the idea of presence again.
Yeah.
Presence is not good or bad. We are just there. You can't say that that's good or bad. I think that we need to have more scales. Yellow or orange is not good or bad. It just fits in different places.
Exactly, it depends on the context.
Yeah.
And if you will be something else than Gustav the human, like you can choose to be something else, what will you choose to be and why?
I remember at one point I had a discussion about me being a probiotic when I got this question. That's building bridges and connecting and helping. And there's the idea of spreading the virus, but viruses are bad, so maybe a probiotic is better.
Spreading the magic.
I don't know. That's something.
Yeah. How long have you been working now as a urban planner, like your career? How many years?
Is it 15, I think?
15?
Mm.
Cool. So my question is, name something you did in your career and you're very proud of, and then something you did and you regret doing it.
I guess people often talk about that I'm very patient. Maybe I'm proud to be patient enough to just wait. Eventually things are solved. You just need to forgive things and take it another round. I think I'm quite proud too about the things I'm really bad at. And to explain that is that I think that in order to be really good at things that is meant for you to do, to take possession of the qualities you have as your character and the person you are, then you need to be able to say no to certain things and to not be great at that. Because if you're great at something that you don't like to do, then that's a curse. I just happen to have the possibility and luck to work with these quite philosophical questions, and I'm extremely bad at sitting in CAD and making plans, and because I had the opportunity to think about the more holistic ideas and putting the processes together and listening to people and being more editor, or I'm not the producer of the movie, I'm the director of the movie. And I was lucky to make the skills to become director of planning and not producer of planning.
Cool.
That's a bless to be bad at certain things.
Yeah, but also, good in something else.
It also teaches you that you need to be dependent on other people. And that's a good thing, to be dependent on people and create collaborations and synergies and
Interesting. And something you regret?
But I think I talked about that fact that I don't know what I did, in a sense, when I talked about what I did in 2008, and if it's 15 years,
yeah,
I guess. And did I do something good there? I don't know.
Wait. What happened in 2008?
I did the Nya Årstafältet in Stockholm.
You don't know if it's good or bad.
It has changed so much. It's hard. Certain things I know I put in. I know that I wrote specifically in the documents that we did, that I wrote that there should be a lot of different stakeholders. There should be a lot of different architects. There should be a lot of different. There should be the diversity that I've been talking about here too. And there is a diversity of different architects in the area. There is a diversity of different stakeholders in the area.
Cool.
Other things, I don't know if it was me who did it, or if that was somebody else later in the process, or if.
Do you feel guilty that you have been part of this?
No, not like that. No. No. I don't feel that it was myself who did it. We have been very many people who have been working with this area.
Do you, if you choose another profession than urban planning, what will you choose?
Well, sometimes I talk about the fact that all the things I like is this kind of, I call it the Polaroid effect. You know your goal,
Yeah.
you know exactly where you're taking your Polaroid photo at.
Mm.
Then you press the button and you are shaking the picture and you don't really know what's going to happen there. And I love the Polaroid effect in anything I do. You know, I'm a trained chef. I took a half-year
Wow.
course in Ireland as a chef. It's the same, exactly the same process as making a city that has the Polaroid effect of slowly unfolding. You make food and it slowly comes out. I'll be making music, exactly the same process
Mm.
as you know, it's something moving.
Yeah.
Raising my kids, it's the same. It's something that slowly unfolds. Seeing my friends,
Yeah.
writing this book, I don't exactly know where it's going to end up.
You don't feel scary that you don't know the destination or the final product? I mean,
But in a sense, I do. You know, that's you know, I know this framework of all those things. I might know the kind of dish I'm doing. There might even be a recipe, but I don't know if I'm going to succeed with that recipe. But in the end, something is going to unfold, and I need to improvise a little bit within the framework. And,
yeah.
you know, I love seeing my garden grow. I know what I'm planting, but that plant might die, and then that was not meant to be. It was
Yeah.
meant for another one.
Interesting, because like you're a planner, you know, you're supposed, like this is the stereotype, you're supposed to plan something and to know the end, the final product, the result, and so on. You cannot say, I don't know how the future will be, you know?
Yeah, but and maybe that's also the kind of planner I have been in my, you know, I always been in the early phases. There might be some politicians that are still talking about how it should be,
Yeah.
you know, and argue if this is right or wrong. And
Mm.
they might want to see their proposal, and then we show them, and you know. So I always been really early phases, and then you don't know. You're just setting the seed in the ground.
Mm.
And usually I'm not part of the later phases. I'm part of the very early phases,
Very
and
early.
that has become my skill uh,
Yeah.
to set the starting point, to set the narrative, and set the
Mm.
ideas and the
Mm.
philosophy behind something. No matter if it, you know, that I think that's why I also worked within architecture. I have no idea how to make architecture, but I've been working with a lot of architectural projects because I know it's the same thing when you make the concept for the building.
Yeah.
You need to understand the context and people who live in the building and why this building came to be, and what's the idea behind it, and
Mm-hmm.
how we're going to take it all the way to the finish line. Which people are we going to collaborate with in order to take it all the way?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been putting a lot of teams together too. You know,
That's
that's
good.
also
That's
that's
really
the
good.
same. That's the same process. Yeah. To try to figure out what ingredients you put in your
Yeah.
pot to make something interesting.
Cool. I like it. And how do you find the work-life balance? Do you have it? No?
Uh, no, I don't think I do. I think moving to Sweden helped. Uh, I don't. I don't really think the world is yet. That's a typical like question of modern life. The world is not really designed to provide work-life balance yet.
Mm, mm,
That's why the question exists in society, because it's a question for everyone.
mm,
Um, and we need to find better questions to eradicate that question. We need to measure more time, measure more things, you know, how people experience things and the way things are and how we prioritize our time, and um, yeah, be more wisely of how we can.
mm,
I think it's interesting that, I mean, society is built with time, and that's the question of work-life balance. How do we deal with our time?
mm,
But
mm,
society is not measured in time. It's not measured on how to prioritize time. It's
mm,
measured often in economy. Um, so unless we also measure our time and how to prioritize it, it's going to be there's not everything that's better moving from Sweden. You know, suddenly the kindergarten, like the other weeks, the kindergarten just put a date for now you need to come here for a meeting for the kids.
Yeah.
And then the one for the ventilation did the same thing. I'm gonna come now in 15 minutes. And like both of them, they didn't ask me; they just came. You know, it's like, okay, I have a meeting too. What should I do?
Yeah. No, but like my point of this question, you're a passionate urban planner. At the same time, you have family, you have kids, and so on. So where do you draw the line that, okay, I should stop do urban planning, it's my time, I should do something else? Or no, you don't feel that this is work, this is urban planning, this is life. You feel that somehow they are into each other.
But I try to work when it's working hours as much as I can.
Mm.
I try to work until I have the economy to live the life that my kids deserve. And I try to give them time. I try to take time off when it's the right moment. You know. I also think that as an urban planner, you have a very big responsibility to live the life you are designing for. It's your work and it's your absolute responsibility to live a life. You cannot. There is even more among architects. There are so many architects working so much they have no idea about the life they're designing for. They work day and night and they only know architecture and they don't know what life is. And how can they make great buildings for life if they don't have enough experience of life? So
that's true.
To have a non-professional life is extremely important as an urban planner, and to have friends and family that are not architects, not urban planners.
Yeah.
And I feel extremely blessed to have a wife that's not an architect or urban planner.
Good.
And to realize that, oh, she doesn't understand this, that, or you know, I need to be able to explain this so that people can understand.
Yeah. It's also like because the thing is that, as you mentioned, our profession is a creative. We need to create life, create the image of the future. And in order to do that, we need inspiration as well, like how people are living and traveling, meeting, eating. But if we are like all the time in our offices working day and night and missing the actual life out there, so how are we going to get inspiration? Or if we are hanging out with the same people, only architects, let's say, and have no idea what other, like whether IT engineering doing or a traffic planner or I don't know, store seller, something like this. Yeah, something completely different from our bubble. So how are we going to get inspiration and create cities for all people? So it's important that we are out there as well, enjoying life, traveling, eating, meeting people we don't have something in common with, to understand them at least.
I love this. You know, my wife is from France, so I had a lot of, and I lived in France, and I have French friends and half French kids, and you know, being blessed by learning the French way of disagreeing. I love it. You know,
teach me.
For instance, there was this movie in France. The whole movie is just in one room.
Yeah.
And the movie is about two couples, and one couple comes in, and we are going to name our kid Hitler. And the other couple, oh, you're crazy, you're idiot, you can't name him Hitler. That's the entire movie. This conflict, and it ends by them not being friends anymore. We can't be friends with you anymore, and then they leave. But it's a very French way. It's such a French thing, you know. Being with my French friends, sometimes maybe not as harsh as saying that our kids are going to be Hitler, but you know, I might say that I love to have more cars in the city, which is not my opinion. And that makes a good discussion in between you and me. Like you were talking about, you were the devil's advocate before. I would love to make these kind of workshops where everybody had to make a dystopia and then talk for it. Why should we have this dystopia?
Yeah, exactly.
Just for the fact that we need to have those discussions, and we need to like.
I think discussions are important. You know, like innovation come from collaboration, discussion. It's not
It's
like
important
from
to value people for what they do rather
yeah,
than
yeah.
what they are discussing. That
Mm,
might not even be their opinion, what they are discussing.
mm.
This discussion is important, and the discussion needs to have every aspect in order to understand it.
Mm.
And if you don't have it in the room, then just play theater,
Exactly, yeah. Do you have like a tough discussions with the clients?
I don't know. Swedish clients are extremely easy to discuss with, and
Okay.
I remember I had a colleague in France who was saying, I don't remember what he said. He said something like, "If the client doesn't cry, it's not a good project," something like this. Then we haven't discussed the solutions well enough.
This is interesting. So, Gustav, now we are in the end of this episode, and I have 3 questions for you.
Mm.
And the first one is that you give a message to yourself.
To me,
Yeah.
it's okay. Don't worry. One step at a time. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Enjoy the moment. But I give myself that.
Are you thinking about the book or
I don't know.
or life in general?
It's a good message.
Then 3 takeaway messages to our listeners.
Do what you can where you are with what you have. That's 3.
Tell it again.
Do what you can where you are with what you have.
Nice. Cool. I love it.
It's an old.
Good,
I don't
good.
remember if it was Eleanor Roosevelt or somebody who said it. It was some American president, I think. I love it.
It's really good, huh?
I remember there was a conference that ended with the fact that they talked about climate change,
Yeah.
and they said that don't worry if you don't know what to do. That's not the question to know what you're gonna do. Just start. Gather some
Yeah.
people and start doing it, even if you are just totally lost in it. That doesn't matter. Just start. It's like, I love this concept of butterfly dreams. The butterfly is
Yeah.
heading somewhere, but it's quite unclear where it's fluttering.
Ah.
But as long as it's flying towards the sun, or
It's
whatever,
going, yeah.
it's going, and it's okay to flutter around and just continue. That's good.
So
And
do what you
can
do what you can with what you have.
where you are.
It's really good, no? It's really good.
And I love it.
Yeah.
Everyone can do something, and it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Good. And the last question is going to be you asking it to us. So what is your question to us?
Maybe I should make the workshop for you then. Like, imagine the place you truly dislike and how this architecture look, and how does the public space look like this horrible place that who are these bad people deciding, and how badly is it smelling, what you feel around, and then imagine this place that it's you who did it. It's your responsibility to fix it, so you should not blame it on someone else. You should just stop being sad about it, and just start talking about us, about that we had to fix it. And how can you do what you can where you are with what you have?
It's a good one, huh? Gustav, thank you so much for giving your time to record this. And as I told you, I'm really happy that you exist on LinkedIn, because I learn a lot from the different discussion you have with others, or we have at the comments. I really encourage you to keep doing this, because you're spreading a lot of knowledge and inspiring people, inspiring me as well.
I would encourage everyone to. I think what I try to do on LinkedIn is that thing. Do what you can, what you have.
Yeah.
Stop saying that we won this project and congratulations for this and that. Just have a discussion. You don't need to have any likes. It's just, it would be so many more people gathering around us all if we just start to have conversations on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn would benefit of having conversations.
Yeah.
And already that can be quite hard because you don't see the emotions of people who just write messages. You don't know if they're angry or sad or happy or I'm usually happy behind what I'm writing.
Yeah, this is a good message to people to know. You're happy.
Great. So everyone starts to write things.
Yeah. Great. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Happy to be here and talk to you.
Ciao.